Welcome. Today we're studying a home that leads with restraint, dark stone grounding it to the earth, timber screening softening its edges, and a roofline that stretches out further than instinct expects. If you're planning to build, this is where I want you to start looking, not at the front door, but at everything above and around. Notice how the roof doesn't sit close to the walls, it extends well beyond them, creating deep shade before you've even reached the entry. That overhang isn't decoration. In a hot, humid climate, it's doing real work, keeping direct sun off the glass and the walls below it for most of the day. The base of this house is stone, heavy and grounded, while everything above it lightens into timber slats and glass. That's a deliberate hierarchy, solid at the ground, permeable above, and it's one of the clearest lessons in tropical design. If you're planning to build, ask your architect how your own material palette will handle this same transition from ground to sky. From the shaded approach we just studied, the house now asks you to cross a threshold, and this architect has made you work for it slightly. A shallow reflecting pool runs alongside the path, forcing a deliberate, slower walk toward the door. That pacing is intentional. It's the moment the house asks you to arrive, not just enter. The circular timber canopy overhead marks the entry as a distinct architectural event, separate from the roofline above it. It's a small gesture, but it tells a visitor exactly where to go without needing signage or a change in paving color. Water at an entry does more than look calming. Moving water masks street noise and softens the transition from the public world to the private one. If you're planning to build, this is a low-cost, high-impact idea worth discussing with your architect early. Past the threshold, the house opens straight into its social heart. This is an island and run kitchen, a working wall of cabinetry on one side, a freestanding island on the other, with a live-edge dining table extending the line even further toward the garden. That layout isn't accidental. It keeps cooking, gathering, and the outdoors on one continuous sightline. The island is finished in a dark, veined stone with a waterfall edge running to the floor, a detail that looks simple but is genuinely difficult to fabricate and install without a visible seam. If it's natural stone, expect periodic sealing. If it's an engineered slab, expect better stain resistance but a similar price point either way. Notice the storage hierarchy above the counter's glass, fronted upper cabinets for display, closed walnut cabinetry below for everyday function. That's a deliberate choice. What you're proud of stays visible, what you actually use daily stays hidden. If you're planning your own kitchen, ask your designer which items you actually want on display before you spend on glass fronts. From the kitchen's working energy, the house releases into its main living space, and the first thing to notice is the ceiling. It doesn't stay flat. It steps and channels light along recessed coves, which reads as generous volume without needing extra floor area. The seating here is arranged into facing groups rather than one single block, both oriented toward the stone fireplace wall. That's a sightline decision. It gives the room two centers of gravity, one for quiet conversation, one for the fire, and both still connect visually back to the garden beyond the glass. This room's entire long wall is glazed and faces out toward dense planting, which means light moves through it steadily across the day rather than arriving as one harsh beam. Sheer curtains soften that light further without blocking the connection outward. If you're planning to build, ask your architect which direction your main glazing faces. It decides how this room feels every single day, not just at first viewing. Beyond the living spaces, the house shifts register entirely. This is the master bedroom, and the first thing an architect notices is restraint warm wood, a single stone accent wall, and a sculptural ceiling detail that draws the eye up without adding visual noise to the room. A full glazed wall runs the length of the room, facing out toward the palm canopy, with sheer curtains that filter rather than block the view. Positioned this way, the room reads as facing a garden aspect rather than the street, which matters for both morning light and evening privacy. Notice the seating area tucked to one side, separate from the bed itself. That's a deliberate zoning move. It gives the room a place to sit and dress that isn't the bed, which matters more than most people expect for how restful a bedroom actually feels. If you're planning to build, ask your architect to zone your bedroom into at least 2 functions, not just one. Off the master bedroom sits the en suite, and it reads as a distinct architectural moment rather than an afterthought. A freestanding, bronze-toned tub sits directly against the glazed wall, positioned as the visual centerpiece of the entire room rather than tucked into a corner. The wet zone. Shower and tub area is enclosed in frameless glass against a dark stone wall, while the dry zone with the double vanity sits on warm timber flooring. That separation between wet and dry surfaces is one of the most important planning decisions in any bathroom, long before finishes are chosen. Natural light reaches this room through full glazing rather than a small window, which means the architect made a privacy decision here. Screening or planting outside the glass, not frosted glass inside it. If you're planning your own en suite, ask whether your privacy strategy comes from the glass itself or from what's planted outside it. Tucked beside the master suite is a room most house tours skip the closet, but it deserves the same attention as any other space. Here, a central island splits the room into 2 mirrored hanging bays, with an oversized chandelier marking it as a considered space, not leftover square footage. The island itself does double-duty leather-topped drawers below for folded items, a shallow tray on top for jewelry and small accessories. That's smart hierarchy. The things you touch daily sit at arm height. Everything else is a step further away. Notice the glass-fronted upper cabinet spared with open hanging rails. A mix of display and function that keeps the room feeling organized rather than cluttered, even at full capacity. If you're planning your own dressing room, ask your designer to plan storage by how often you touch an item, not just by category. Beyond the private wing sits a room built for focus rather than rest, the home office. A single large desk anchors the space, set against a full glazed wall so the person working here never loses the connection to the garden outside. Walnut shelving lines the side walls, mixing books and objects with integrated shelf lighting. Rather than a single overhead source, that layered lighting approach matters more in a workspace than almost anywhere else. It reduces eye strain across long hours without the flatness of a single ceiling fixture. A separate lounge seating area sits near the window, giving the room a second mode. For calls, reading, or a break from the desk without leaving the space entirely. If you're planning a home office, ask your architect for at least 2 distinct zones within the room, not just one desk against a wall. Having moved through every room in the house, it's worth stepping back to look at what actually ties them together. A consistent material language, dark veined stone, warm walnut timber, and bronze-toned metal accents repeat from the kitchen to the bathroom to the office, and that repetition is what makes a large house feel cohesive rather than assembled from separate ideas. Look closely at where materials meet stone into timber, timber into metal trim. Clean, tight junctions like these are expensive to execute well and easy to get wrong. A poorly detailed transition is one of the fastest ways a high-end material palette starts looking cheap. The stone used throughout carries visible veining and natural variation, which means no two slabs are identical, a hallmark of natural material rather than a printed replica. If you're planning to build, ask to see the actual slab your stone will be cut from, not just a sample chip. Having moved through the full interior, it's worth stepping back outside to see how this house sits on its site. From above, the relationship is clear. A broad front lawn, a stone motor court sized for multiple vehicles, and dense palm planting used as a living privacy screen along the boundary. The reflecting pool and paving at the entry aren't just an arrival gesture. They establish a hard landscape spine that organizes how a resident moves from the driveway to the front door. Notice how the planting is layered in height, low grasses near the path and tall palms further back, which reads as intentional zoning rather than random landscaping. Based on this exterior, the primary outdoor zone visible is the arrival and motor court. If you're planning to build, ask to see a full site plan, not just the front elevation, before judging how well a house connects indoors to outdoors. We've now walked through this house from arrival to every private room within it, and it's worth pausing on what actually holds up over time: structure, orientation, and material choice. The decisions made before construction even began are the ones you cannot easily undo later. Everything we saw today, from the fireplace stone to the bedroom's window, orientation to the bathroom's waterproofing, traces back to decisions made at the very start of design. That's the real lesson of a house like this. Good architecture isn't visible in any single finish. It's visible in how consistently every decision supports the ones around it. If you take one thing from this walkthrough, let it be this. Ask about the decisions you can't see: waterproofing, glazing orientation, structural layout. These cost more to get right up front and far more to fix later. If you're planning to build, that question list matters more than any finished sample. That's the full walkthrough. From the first glimpse of the facade to the last light on the horizon, 11 senses, 11 lessons: what to look for, what to ask, and what to remember before you ever sign a contract. If this changed how you'll walk through your next show home, that's exactly what this channel is for. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next walkthrough. Because the best time to learn these lessons is before you build, not after.